Who wouldn't want to spend a couple of days on the Galileo, cruising off the coast of Thailand? Built to sail the world, the 55-metre super yacht is super luxurious. Big enough for 12 mates. It's not at all surprising she's worth more than $30 million. But what is shocking is she was effectively paid for by you, via government contracts. Do you think Australians should be pissed off with what's going on down here?
I think they should be rightly concerned about the millions of taxpayer dollars that are spent this way.
The boat belongs to businessman Craig Thrupp. He also owns this beach house off the coast of Bali, a 5-bedroom villa perched on a cliff top. They're the kind of purchases only the filthy rich can make. And Craig Thrupp is indeed a very wealthy man, thanks to a 2-year federal government contract that is now the subject of intense scrutiny. We've discovered the founding director of Paladin has made a personal profit, an estimated $160 million. Does that surprise you?
It does surprise me, but it doesn't surprise me. I suspect the profit margins in those contracts would have been very high.
$160 million seems to be excessively high.
It looks pretty good.
What do we want? Freedom! What do we want? Freedom! What do we want? Freedom!
In 2017, Craig Thrupp's little-known company, Paladin, won a massive $500 million contract to manage offshore processing for Australia's Home Affairs Department on Manus Island. Thrupp was no doubt expecting blowback from refugee advocates. But it's unlikely he ever thought his company Paladin would come under the glare of the man who once led Australia's spy agency. Since July last year, former ASIO and Defence Department boss Dennis Richardson has been investigating if Home Affairs stuffed up when giving eye-watering offshore processing contracts to relatively unknown firms like Paladin.
It was a very small entity when it initially got contracts. It got contracts in areas in respect of which it had no particular expertise. Those contracts were consistently renewed over a period of time without ever being rechecked. And it was the failure to do the proper due diligence which led to Paladin getting contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Unsurprisingly for an old spy master, for his inquiry, Richardson sought access to secret intelligence gathered by Australian agencies and spoke to cops and whistleblowers. He discovered multiple red flags that Paladin had engaged in suspected corruption in PNG, potentially on Home Affairs' dime. Were you told that Paladin allegedly engaged in bribery?
During the course of the inquiry, yes. Yes, I was.
What did you do with that information?
We passed on relevant information to the AFP and to the National Anti-Crime Commission.
Do you think Home Affairs should have acted on warning signs that Paladin may be engaged in criminal wrongdoing, allegedly?
I think they should have pursued greater due diligence than what they did.
It gets even worse.
Sure.
For Paladin was not alone. Is it correct that you found Home Affairs had contractual relationships with companies under active investigation by the Federal Police?
Yes.
Firms suspected of bribery and corruption?
Yes.
A firm whose CEO is being investigated for possible drugs and arms smuggling?
Yes.
A company implicated in suspected Iranian sanction busting and money laundering?
A company whose directors were suspected of being so involved.
For all this to have happened, there must have been one hell of a due diligence failure.
There was a lack of due diligence and there was information within the government, but it was never accessed.
Stands to reason then, though, that that failure to access readily available information led to alleged crooked companies being contracted?
That's a fair comment.
And therefore taxpayer money flowing to such alleged crooked entities?
That's a fair comment.
And while there's no suggestion Thrupp was personally involved in wrongdoing, Dennis Richardson has confirmed the Federal Police has launched bribery probes into his firm and a second Australian company, Canstruct. Richardson also says the AFP has its own questions to answer about a third contractor it suspected was rotten to the core.
The AFP itself had been investigating a particular individual for foreign bribery offences, was aware that that person was in a contractual relationship with the Department of Home Affairs, but at no stage did they advise Home Affairs. In fact, Home Affairs became aware of the AFP investigation through a media release.
That seems simply inexplicable.
It's a breakdown in communication.
To be clear, you're saying the AFP is investigating an alleged bribe payer, and for 3 years they failed to tell Home Affairs, their own department, Home Affairs is separately paying that alleged bribe payer to run offshore processing.
That's quite right.